Okay, this is the review for Scantron Test Prep 5. And this test prep actually starts with a review of 5th grade material, which is the metric system. So when we convert units in the metric system, we really need to remember a little phrase so that we can properly change between our units. So the phrase that I like is King Henry died, and he could have died 3 ways depending on the type of unit. If you're talking about meters, he died on Monday. If you're talking about grams, he died grossly. And if you're talking about liters, he might have died laughing. And however he died while he was drinking chocolate milk. So today, while we're working all of our problems, you're going to be writing these letters down, the first letter of each word. And as you write down the letters today, I want you to say this little phrase to yourself every time you write it, because obviously you won't have these notes on your Scantron test, and we want this to stay in your brain on test day. Okay, so now let's write out the letters and what they truly stand for. All right, so I'll say it to myself. King Henry died. Now he died either laughing on Monday or grossly drinking chocolate milk. All right, so this K stands for kilo. The H is hecto. D is deca. Okay, the L is liter. If you're talking about units of capacity, like how much liquid you could hold. M is for meter. If you're talking about the length of something. And G is for gram, if you're talking about the weight of something. Okay, now we have a second D. And the way I don't get the D's confused is because all of these are very small. And they all end with an I. To me, when you say a word that ends with I, it just sounds tiny to me. This is deci. Doesn't that sound tiny and little? And this is centi. So cute. And this is milli. That one's really cute. You can't even tell what I wrote. M-I-L-L-I. Yeah, I'm trying not to take up too much room. All right. So then each of these stands for something. So kilometer, let's just use meters because that's the most common. Kilometer, hectometer. Now because there are 2 D's, when you write decameter, you have to do the DA for deca, and then the M would be meter. This is decimeter with just 1 D, centimeter, and millimeter. When we're moving between units today, if we're using the meter and we have an M in the middle, don't get that M confused with the last M. If it's asking you to go to millimeter, it will have 2 M's. If it wants you to just go to plain meter, it just will have 1 M. Okay, does anybody have a question about any of this information before we try a few? All right, then. Problem 1. Let's say we have 25 hectometers, and we want to know how many meters that is. Step 1 is we're going to write our little letters and say the phrase as we write them. King Henry died, and this time he died on Monday because it's meters, drinking chocolate milk. Okay, so now I'm going to see how many places I'm going to move my decimal. I'm going from hecto to plain meter. 1, 2. Notice I put my arrow at the end as well, so I'll remember the correct direction to move my decimal. So now it's time to move the decimal, but guess what? 25 is a whole number, so you can't see a decimal, but I could put a decimal in. Who could tell me where the decimal would actually go? Aiden. At the end, which is right behind the 5. So go ahead and put your decimal in. All right, and now we'll throw in a couple of zeros because it doesn't change the value. And now I'm ready to move my decimal just like I moved here on my little number or letter list. 1, 2. Draw your arrow to show where the new decimal goes. It makes my new value 2,500 meters. Anybody have a question? Yes, Audrey.
Can't you just say that hecto is like 100, so it would be like 25 times 100?
And when you're moving, that is technically what you're doing. We're either multiplying or dividing by 10, 100, 1,000. Yes, we're moving by tens. Each time we do the little arrow thing, that is what we're doing. And if that works for you, then you keep using that. Most people like the visual to be able to do it correctly. So whichever works for you is fine with me. All right, number 2. Let's say we have 13 and a half decameters. How many centimeters is that? So first step, let's write our letters and say our phrase. King Henry died Monday drinking chocolate milk. All right, this time I'm going from the deca to centi. Start at your deca and move to the centi. Hey, when you're moving on these letters, go right on the letter. Don't go between because then it gets confusing whether you're before or after. So make sure it's right on the letter. So notice we did 3 jumps. This time, we already have a decimal in our number, so that's nice. So we will add some zeros so that we can make 1, 2, 3 jumps. And so our new answer is 13,500 centimeters. Question. Okay, one more. We're going to try going a different way. Yes, William?
So every time you jump, don't you just like add a zero?
If needed. Sometimes the numbers will already be there. The digits will. All right, let's say we have 15 milligrams. How many grams will that be? All right, we write our phrase. King Henry died. Oh, not Monday. Grossly. Drinking chocolate milk. Okay, so this time I'm going from milligram to plain gram. So start at the milli. We're going to gram. So we're going in a different direction. All right, when I write my number 15, it's a whole number. Where does the decimal go?
At the end?
At the end. We place it. Now we need to do 3 leaps. So we'll need to add zeros on the left this time because we're going in that direction. So we need to leap 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So the new decimal goes there. 0 whole numbers and 15 thousandths. Yes, sir.
How do you know how many zeros you put?
Really, it doesn't matter how many zeros you put on either side because the zeros are not changing that value. It matters where you place the decimal. And when you put your answer in Canvas, you know Canvas will adjust your zeros anyways. Okay, any metric system questions? All right, then. The next type of question will be a temperature question. So they'll give you some thermometers. And when you see these thermometers, they have these dashes on the sides of the thermometers. Zoom that in for you. Please don't get these dashes confused with negative signs. Remember, negative goes in front of the number. Like that is a -3. So here's -3, -2, -1. This is 0, 1, 2, and 3. So these are just dashes. They're not negative signs. These are all positive up here. So let's say they give you a thermometer and the thermometer's shaded. And then they'll give you some words. Let's say if the temperature, I need to zoom out a little bit now, dropped 3 degrees, what would the temperature be? Okay, so when I get a problem like this, I need to figure out, first of all, where am I starting? What is my current temperature? Aiden?
1.
Okay, so I put a 1 on my paper. All right, now the temperature will drop. What operation shows dropping? Allison.
Subtraction.
So we do a minus sign. Now, how much is the temperature dropping? Jasmine. 3 degrees. So now it becomes an integer problem, just like yesterday's problems. Just type in your calculator 1 minus 3, and you'll have your answer. Anybody have a temperature question? Okay, they also have elapsed time questions. And the first one's pretty tough because it involves crossing over time zones. But they do give you a little hint, which helps. So let's say we have an airplane and it leaves Los Angeles, which is in California, at 4 o'clock p.m. And it will arrive in Huntsville at 10 o'clock p.m. How long is your flight?
4 hours. No, 5. No. 6.
Okay. So most of the time I'll have students that'll look just at the time and they'll count from 4 to 10 and say 6, but that is not correct because of time change. And the hint that Scantron will give you is that there's a 2-hour difference between California and Illinois. So we have to change that time by 2 hours before we count hours. So what I'm going to do is take this 4 o'clock p.m. and I'm going to add 2 hours to it to make my time the same as what it is in Central. So instead of 4 p.m., what time will it be? Franklin. 6 p.m. Now I can go from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And how many hours now, Ryder? How many hours? What was your original answer?
4.
So yeah, there is a 4-hour flight. Okay? Okay, so when I said Illinois earlier, I forgot that that was the problem from the actual test, and this problem is Huntsville. All right, number 6. On this problem, we're going to look at time, and we're going to add it all up and see what the total time is. So let's pretend this girl was at work one day, and the first day she worked for 5 hours, and that's 32 minutes. And then on the second day, she worked 4 hours and 12 minutes. And then on the third day, she worked for 7 hours and 50 minutes. So the question is, how much did she work in all? So what you'll need to do on this question is line up hours and minutes. So 5 hours, 32 minutes. 4 hours, 12 minutes, and 7 hours, and 50 minutes. This will look similar to what we did when we were working customary system a couple of weeks ago, where we'll have to rename to make it in simplest form. So we'll just use our calculator and add our minutes to get 94 minutes. And then we'll do the same with our hours, and we get 16 hours. So then to simplify, we notice that 94 minutes is longer than just 1 hour. And how many minutes are in 1 hour, Trey? So then we take 60 minutes away, which leaves us with the 34 minutes. And when we take this 60 minutes away, we add it over here, not as minutes though, as 1 hour. So then that'll give us 17 hours and 34 minutes for our simplified answer. So again, you line up your times, add your hours and minutes separately, and then you adjust as needed. Does anybody have a question on this type of question? They also have some time questions that work the opposite direction. Let's say it takes 3 hours and 52 minutes to cut grass. It's a big yard. How many minutes is this? So now we're going from hours to minutes. So what I want to think about is, first of all, how many minutes are in 1 hour? Aiden? Allison? 60. So I have 3 hours, so I'll need 3 60s, because each 60 minutes is 1 hour. But then I don't need to forget that I've also got this 52 minutes here. So then all I do is type that into my calculator, and it'll take 232 minutes to mow that grass. And then they give you a day problem. So it takes 352 hours and 80 minutes. I just said to walk a long way. You'll be walking a long time. How many days is this? So this time I'm going from hours, and now I want it to become days. So the unit's going to be bigger. So instead of multiplying, this time I'll be dividing. Okay, so first of all, notice this is an 80 minute here. And do you see how you can fit another hour and add another hour over here? Take the 60 from here. So that's 353 hours. Now we're going to divide that by how many hours are there in a day? Rihanna? 24. All right, so then when you have 24 hours in one day, and this is how many hours you had, the answer is a decimal. And so the question on the Scantron will just ask you to round to the nearest day or amount of days. So I would just pick an answer that's somewhere close to the answer you get when you divide, because it will be a decimal answer. Okay, now, no freaking out. We're going to do something with circumference. Okay, so the directions will say, find the circumference. Circumference is the distance around a circle. When they ask you to do this, they actually give you all the information you need. So they'll give you your picture of your circle. They give you the diameter, which is how far it is across a circle. You'll also need to use something called pi. Pi is a decimal that actually goes on to infinity. And so they just round it at 3.14. They also are going to give you the formula. So it's really not as bad as you think, because even though we haven't studied circles yet, we have studied how to take information and plug it into a formula and solve. So we can do this. So when I find the circumference, I need to multiply the pi times the diameter of the circle. It told me that pi was 3.14. And then I just multiply it times the diameter, which is here across the circle. And that's it. Just type that into your calculator. And circumference is 78 5/10. Does anybody have a question on circumference? It's all you're going to have to do. Not a big deal at all. It gives you all the information. All right, number 10. Okay, all the rest of these we have done, but it was from your favorite chapter, chapter 10, that we all had so much fun with. So pay attention. So first of all, you're going to need to do area. Area of the rectangle was the easiest. If you remember the formula, it was simply length times the width. So all we have to do is type our length times the width into our calculator and find the correct answer. You'll also need to do the area of a parallelogram, but it's also easy. So area on this, we call it base times height, but it doesn't matter. Length times width, base times height, it's the same basic information.
What if there's two numbers in the circle?
Back up to circumference. There shouldn't be two numbers inside a circle. Okay. All right, so base here is 7, height 5 4/10. And again, all you do is type that in your calculator, multiply, and we get 37 8/10. Okay, you'll also have the area of a triangle. Okay, so when we think about our triangles, remember the formula is not too hard because it's half of a rectangle. So 1/2 base times height. Now, in this particular triangle, they give us a measurement that we do not need. Can anybody tell me which of these three numbers are actually unnecessary for area?
7.
7 is not needed. We only need the base and the height. And we know that because there's a right angle there. This is base, this is height. We do not need this. Now, if we were going to find perimeter, we could use that, but we're not. We're just doing area. So 1/2 of the base times the height. And I could do 1/2 of 6, which is 3, and then multiply that times 4. Or I could have done 6 times 4, which is 24, and then taken 1/2 of that. Either way, still gotten 12 for my answer. Okay, so those weren't so bad. Now, surface area, please pay attention on this one. So we're finding surface area. And I need you to see if you can sketch a 3D rectangular prism with me. So start with your rectangle. Okay, now we're going to do an overlapping rectangle. And now we are going to connect the corners. Okay, so let's say this is 4, 5, and 7. All right, here's our formula that we'll use on all of these rectangular prisms. 2 times the length times the width, plus 2 times the length times the height, plus 2 times the width times the height. Okay, and from there we are just going to plug in our numbers. We can label one as the height, one as the length, and another as the width. Alright, so now we are ready to start plugging in. So 2 times length is 5, width is 7, plus 2 times length is 5, height is 4, plus 2 times my width is 7, my height is 4. So I've used each of those numbers twice, and I multiplied them all by 2 because there's 2 of each shape on your rectangular prism. So from here, once I've plugged in, I just multiply and then add. So when I multiply here, I get a 70, and then here I get a 40 and a 56, and then I add these 3 numbers to get 166. Does anybody have a question on surface area? Okay, last one is really easy. Volume. If it's the volume of a rectangular prism, formula is volume equals the length times the width times the height. So it's just straight multiplying, super easy. So if the length is 7, the width is 9, and the height is 2, 7 times 9 times 2 gives us our volume of 126.